Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are putting you right in the shoes of a courtroom detective. Think about it. Every single day, you are absolutely bombarded with information, opinions, and constant attempts to persuade you. It kind of feels like a noisy, chaotic world out there, doesn't it? But what if you had a foolproof toolkit to just cut through all that noise and uncover the actual truth? Well, that is exactly what we are building today as we look into the architecture of persuasion.
Check out this piece of ancient wisdom from Proverbs 18:17. It says, "In a lawsuit, the first to speak seems right until someone comes forward and cross-examines." Think about how incredibly true this still is for us today. I mean, how easy is it to be completely fooled by the first side of a story you hear? A post on social media goes viral and it sounds perfectly convincing, right? That is, until you actually dig a little deeper and hear the other side. This explainer is all about learning how to be that exact person who steps forward to cross-examine.
So here is our quick roadmap for today's investigation. First, the power of persuasion. Second, building the argument. Third, cross-examining the case. Fourth, spotting weak evidence. And finally, number 5, education rooted in morality. By the time we finish this up, you're going to have a bulletproof method for finding the truth.
Okay, let's dive straight into Section 1, the power of persuasion. Why does analyzing an argument even matter in the first place? Well, arguments are not just people yelling at each other or blasting loud opinions online. A true argument is all about persuading with facts and logic. Whether you're reading an editorial, watching a political debate, or literally just scrolling through your feed, spotting weak arguments that are driven purely by emotion is an absolute survival skill today. We are constantly flooded with information, and you really need to be able to recognize who is actually making sense and who is just making noise.
Moving right along to Section 2, building the argument. Let's open up that metaphorical detective kit and look at the core components of a solid case.
Here is our first checkpoint question for you. What are the 3 main parts of an argument? Well, a really strong argument is built from a clear claim, solid evidence, and logical reasoning. These are your core building blocks. Let's break these down step by step and see how it all comes together. First up, we've got the claim. This is the absolute foundation of the whole thing. It's the main point the author is trying to prove to you. Whenever you are reading an article or listening to someone speak, the very first question you should be asking yourself is, what exactly is this person trying to convince me of? Because honestly, if you can't identify the claim, you can't evaluate the argument.
Okay, so once you know the claim, you start looking for the evidence. This is your concrete proof. And evidence isn't just someone saying, hey, trust me on this. It includes verifiable facts, hard statistics, really specific examples, or qualified expert opinions. As a detective hunting for the truth, you have to look incredibly closely at what actual facts are being provided to back up the author's big claim.
And finally, we have reasoning. Reasoning is the explanation of exactly how that evidence connects to and ultimately proves the claim. It's basically the glue holding it all together. So let me ask you, why is reasoning so important in an argument? Well, it's crucial because raw data means absolutely nothing if you don't explain why it matters. If an author just throws a bunch of statistics at you without explaining the connection, they simply haven't finished building their case. This flow right here brilliantly illustrates the entire process. You gather the evidence, you apply logical reasoning to connect it, and boom, that is how you prove the claim. You are quite literally building a bridge from raw, scattered data to a proven, solid point. And if any part of this bridge is missing, the whole argument just collapses.
But hey, what happens when someone disagrees? That brings us to our next checkpoint. Take a second and think about it. What exactly is a counterclaim?
To answer that, it's time to step back into our courtroom for Section 3, cross-examining the case. Let's put these arguments through the ultimate stress test. So, a counterclaim is simply an opposing viewpoint. It is the other side of the argument. And the rebuttal is the explanation of why that counterclaim is, well, less convincing than the original claim. Now, what's really fascinating here is that the best arguments don't hide from counterclaims at all. They actually welcome them. Anticipating what the opposing side is going to say lets you build a much stronger case. Let's look at a practical, real-world example regarding school start times. Say a student's claim is, schools should start later in the morning. A totally valid counterclaim would be, well, later school starts reduce time for after-school activities. A smart student doesn't just ignore this. Instead, they offer a rebuttal, saying something like, adjusting activity schedules can prevent conflicts and still allow for those later starts.
Do you see how addressing the concern head-on completely neutralizes the opposing viewpoint? So, I'll ask you, how can addressing a counterclaim strengthen an argument? Well, it shows you've thought about the issue from all possible angles. It proves you aren't just blindly pushing some agenda, but that you've actually tested your logic against criticism and it still holds up. It's what makes your logic bulletproof.
All right, now that we know what a strong argument looks like, we've got to shift gears to the dangers of faulty assumptions that just masquerade as facts. Let's hit Section 4, Spotting Weak Evidence. Just look at the stark contrast here. If you claim schools should start later, strong evidence sounds a lot like this. Studies show students who start later get more sleep and higher grades. See, it relies on actual data. Weak evidence, on the other hand, sounds more like this. Well, everybody knows it's true. Think about the sheer absurdity of that. Relying on the phrase "everyone knows it" is entirely based on an assumption. It is completely empty of any actual proof.
I want to challenge you right now. Can you think of one example of weak evidence you've encountered recently? Think of a time you heard someone rely on their emotions or just broad assumptions instead of hard facts. It literally happens every single day, but now you've got the tools to catch it in real time.
So, why do we even bother learning all this logic? Why sharpen our minds if we don't know what to do with them? That brings us to our final stop, Section 5, Education Rooted in Morality, which explores the macro philosophy of the Hero Smart Academy Godly Learner series.
The source material presents a pretty clear stance. Education without morality will hurt. The crucial point the curriculum is making here is this: what is the point of being smart or being supposedly highly educated if you just continue making bad choices that cause pain to yourself and the people around you? A sharp intellect without a strong moral compass is kind of like a super powerful sports car with no steering wheel. It's just dangerous.
This is exactly why the Hero Smart Academy program intertwines biblical morality with education. As referenced in Romans 8:6-7, there is a promise of peace of mind to everyone who keeps their mind spiritual. The idea is that when you combine your newly sharpened intellect, your ability to seek truth, demand evidence, and reason logically, with a deep moral foundation, you don't just win arguments, you achieve actual peace of mind, building a life that doesn't hurt, but heals.
And that leaves us with one final, vital question to think about. Now that you've got the tools to see right through weak evidence and the wisdom to seek peace, how will you use your sharp intellect and strong moral compass to cross-examine the world today? Don't just blindly accept the very first thing you hear. Seek the truth, demand the evidence, and let your values guide your choices. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you next time.